Good morning, everyone. I am at a different location this morning, so that's okay. We're going to talk about Rome and the coming Roman that we expect to be here now. We're not going to see him in his antichrist form, but we're probably going to see him in his earthly form. And he's probably here, and he's probably out there now. But I wanted to talk about some of the past Roman influences on Christianity. We, of course, know that Nero, the famous one, that he reigned from 54 to 68 AD. He's responsible for not paying attention and allowing Rome to burn. And after the fire, what did he do? He blamed the Christians for it. They had nothing to do with it. It was his fault. But by blaming them, he could then deflect it from himself and persecute them, which he did. Many, many brutal executions. And then he had the, big amphitheater there, the Roman Colosseum, where they were either burned alive or fed to animals. So times for Christians have been bad. Then we have Domitian, 81 to 96 AD. He persecuted Christians to the extent that his actions were a little less clear than Nero's, but he did the same amount of damage. He's carrying on the tradition. They all are taught from the same mold. Then you have Trajan, 98 to 117. Now, he established policies that allowed him to continue punishing Christians. If they didn't worship the Roman gods. And then we have Decius. Now, there's others that are in that gap, but Rome started falling apart. And some of the brothers took over and the siblings took over, and they kind of continue the same thing. It was just anybody who's in power tries to keep everybody down. So he had an empire-wide persecution of Christians, requiring them to worship the emperor. And of course that meant martyrdom for many of them. Now, Diocletian is the one, he's known as the great persecutioner. He thought it was his goal in life that God had appointed him, one of the 12 gods of Rome, not our God, appointed him to get rid of the Christians. So he made that his primary goal, and he almost did. He is probably the greatest reason why we don't have first century manuscripts. Not in its entirety. We have pieces. But he ordered the burning of Bibles as well as the destruction of churches and execution of Christians and everything you can think of. At one point in time, he thought he'd won because he couldn't find any more because they'd gone underground. And he retired. He said, I've done my job. I've gotten rid of the Christians from the earth. God will have mercy on me. He's not sure which God, but one of them will. And one of his subordinates, Galerius, a strong pagan, he helped him persecute. So that was his second lieutenant, I guess. We didn't get any relief until Constantine in 306 AD. And he came after Diocletian and issued an edict in Milan in 313, which granted religious freedom to Christians, effectively ending their persecution. Now, they didn't say we're going to become a Christian nation. That's not what they said. His decree was we're allowing all gods, including the Christians. So they still kept their gods, but the Christian God was allowed to be part of that. And if you wanted to build a Christian church, you could. Okay, so how can we look at the timeline and know when our new Roman's going to show up? And how do we know he's going to be Roman? Well, let's take a look at that. In 538 BC, the Persian king, we'll see this in a little bit, Cyrus issued an order that the Jews could go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. I have a cat meowing in the background. And that's the start of our time clock. We're going to see here in a little bit. So 538 BC is the start of our time clock. And we can get that in Ezra 1:1. And the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, Jehovah stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, the king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all the kingdom, and also in writing, saying, So saith Cyrus, king of Persia, Jehovah, the God of the heavens, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth. Whether he did or whether he not, that's what he believed, but he got the other part right. Because Satan's the ruler of the earth. All the kingdoms of the earth, and has commanded me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is among you of all his people? Let his God be with him, and let you go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of Jehovah, the God of Israel. He is God, which is in Jerusalem. So there's the order right there in Ezra to go build, and we know that was in 538 BC. Okay, if you look it up, it's going to probably say BCE because Google is slowly slipping into the world. Okay, now we've got our time frame. How do we calculate this? There are 70 weeks that we know about in Daniel, so let's read about them. Daniel 9:24. And the word here is heptath, which is their equivalent to dozen, only using sevens. So 70 weeks are decreed as to your people, as to your holy city, to finish the transgressions and to make an end of sins, to make atonement for iniquity, and to bring an everlasting righteousness. Jesus. And to seal up a vision and prophecy and anoint the Most High. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the command to restore and build Jerusalem, build the temple and build Jerusalem, the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 69 weeks. Why didn't they just say 69 weeks? Well, they didn't. That's their writing style. So 69 weeks for Jesus to be here. They've roughly calculated it, that it's probably him riding into town on the donkey, but that's an estimate. But at any time during his reign, we can end the 69 weeks. Some people believe that the 70th week started after he was crucified. I don't believe that. It's still out there. We had to have a break because it says he will be cut off. And after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the ruler who shall come shall destroy the city and sanctuary. In 70 AD. And the end of it shall be with the flood, and the ruins are determined until the end shall be war. So, and now they've had war in that area ever since. So we get our first part. We know that he's cut off. The time of the Gentile is what we're currently in. And it's going to end very soon. Some are predicting in the next month. Now, we can all hope so. If they're not right, we're going to have to rethink. If you ever watch Barry Ah, he's predicted pretty much every year since the Revelation 12 sign. He's stopped predicting dates, though. He's just putting us in a high watch. So we're currently in a high watch. And there's others that agree with him. For pre-trib believers, we're in a high watch. And so it talks about until the end shall be war, And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. That's the Antichrist. And in the midst of the week, in the middle, he shall cause a sacrifice and an offering to cease, and on the corner of the altar, desolating abominations, even until the end. And that which is decreed shall be poured out on the desolator. So there's our timeline. There's what we need to know. From the beginning of the rebuilding of the temple, 538, you're going to count forward. Now remember that these are Hebrew weeks. I'm not going to do the math. There's people out there that have done that. These are Hebrew weeks, not our weeks. And their calendar is based on the moon, not the sun. So we've got to calculate all that. Also keep in mind that the Roman numeral 0 does not exist. So they went from 1 BC to 1 AD straight. There's not a year in there, so you're going to be off by a year. We also know the calculation of Jesus being here and his birth was miscalculated because the church wasn't able to calculate correctly. So taking all that into mind, we can be 5 and 10 years off either way, and we're still good. The bottom line is we're ready now. If we're going to make the 6,000 year time frame for all of this, we need to get this going this year. I have a kitty, another kitty. This is another black kitty. This is my son's black kitty. See, we like black cats. They have a nice color to their shine when they're out in the sun. Anyhow, we need to be ready because he is due. He could be coming this Passover. I don't believe he's tied to a Jewish event. The 70th week, which we still don't have yet, which is due to us. God promised 70 weeks that we just read. We haven't had the 70th week. That's what's coming. That's what the world calls the Great Tribulation. Because we have the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls. The wrath is in there. Now the wrath of God is in the second half, after the abomination of desolation, at the midway point, which we just read about in Daniel. So when does that start? We don't know. That's the problem. We know we can timeline back from the end, but we don't know the start. It's the starting year of when all this is going to happen. Now, if we're pre-trib, pre-trib is first. We have to be out of the way before the Antichrist, because we're preventing him from doing what he wants to do. We're preventing Satan from doing what he wants to do. We're preventing evil from flourishing on this earth. And we saw what was happening before this last election. And now we're seeing just how evil they were. And they haven't gone away. They're just waiting for their turn to come back. And they're going to finish what they started. And we're preventing it. So we have to get out of the way. That's why I believe in pre-trib rapture. Certainly never post-trib rapture. We don't need it. Pre-wrath would take us halfway through the tribulation time frame. I don't believe that either. So it's got to be pre-trib. Now, there are people that are mid-trib, pre-wrath, post-trib. It's got to be pre-trib. I will accept the agreement to disagree for everything except for post-trib. God would never make his bride go through the tribulation. There's no need for it. We've already had the wake-up call. We've already accepted Christ. There's no reason to go through it. He might let us go into it a little bit if the Antichrist is delayed. We don't know the exact time in all this stuff. But we're in the Gentile age. When the Gentile age, the Gentile Christians don't need to be here. So it's logical that the rapture would happen at the end of the Gentile age. Then we switch to the 70th week and finish it. So it's logical. We're not making assumptions, it's logical. Now, if we got the calculations right, this year seems to be the good year for it. Now, my only question is that we've already fulfilled, Jesus has already fulfilled the spring festivals. He hasn't fulfilled the fall ones. So is the rapture in the springtime or in the fall? We don't know. We're hoping it's springtime, and if it is, it should be within the next 2 or 3 weeks, because we've got Passover coming, we've got Easter coming. So watch for it. I would tie it more to Easter than to Passover, but it doesn't have to be tied to an event. It's imminent. It's been imminent since Paul, so keep your lamps filled. All right. This will come out in April. Satan's Day. This is the day that we can give to Satan. It's April Fool's Day. He wants October 31st, Halloween, but he really belongs on this day, April 1st. All right. It may be very soon. So until we meet in the clouds, God bless.